cotton gin was developed in 1793, really takes off, and then that's coupled with the development of different kinds of seeds. So once they have a machine that allows the removal of the small seeds mechanically, so it's not having to be done by hand, then the biologists and the farmers can figure out how to breed cottonseed. So that's what farmers do. I don't understand it. Take a class down in GNE. There's probably somebody down there who can explain it. But the breeding of cottonseed, so creating hybrid cottonseeds, is something that farmers do. And with the cotton gin, then they're able to come up with types of cotton that have small seeds but grow more in more regions and are more fertile. So here's the 1821 map. There's the 1859 map. That's a huge expansion, and this time the scale is the same. That's a huge expansion in the amounts of cotton. There's 1821. One dot is 1,000 bales. There's 1859. So there's a huge expansion, and there's this movement. So there's a lot here that's being grown in the alluvial region, and there's this area here that's part of the upland region. We can look at the location of slaves, and we're going to see a similar pattern to what happens to cotton. So here in 1790, the slave population is located largely in the Chesapeake, where they're growing what? Tobacco. So in 1790, most of the slave population in the United States is involved in the tobacco growing up in the Chesapeake. There's a little bit of population down here in the southern part of South Carolina. The type of cotton they're growing in the southern part of South Carolina is let me get the word right. It's coming up on a later slide, on a much later slide, on a much later slide. Sea island. The type of cotton that's being grown down here on the South Carolina coast is called sea island cotton, C-S-E-A, not sea like I see you, but sea like water. The sea island cotton is the cotton that has that long seed that can be removed by hand, although difficultly. The machinery was helpful for that as well. But the thing about the sea island cotton is the seed part of the name is important because it only really grew right along the coast. The nature of the seed is that when they tried planting it inland, it just didn't do very well. So it needed the soil nutrients and it needed the climate that can be found right along the coast, and it doesn't work very well inland. So there's slave population 1790, there's slave population 1860. Slave population 1860, there's still a lot of slaves up here in the Chesapeake area, but see the big spread. So, and what's being grown there? Cotton. So here's our alluvial region along here. Here's the Piedmont here, and the upland area around there. All right, now that map, just to bring this. Ooh, I didn't turn my clock on today. Just a second, because our ethicist doesn't come in and stand behind me on Thursday to tell me what time it is. She smokes, so I always know that she's here because I can smell her when she walks in the room. Even if I'm talking a lot and I don't, I'm not really conscious of the fact that she's opened the door. Anyway. Okay, so there's a slave population in 1860, and here comes the more recent stuff. So, and here's a map from 2000. And this is from the census. In the 2000 census, they asked people, what's your ancestry? They didn't really define it. They just said, what's your ancestry? And people could answer whatever they wanted. So I think this is fascinating. So these darker purple, they're purple in the original. And this is county by county. So each county has one color, and the color represents what's the number one answer. Okay, so like a Family Feud, what's the number one answer? So what's the number one answer? So these counties here, the number one answer is African American. So there's your slave counties in 1860. There's your map in 2000. Okay, these yellow, here's something really interesting. I'm not going to talk about it for this class, but keep it in mind for any debate you have with anybody. See these yellow squares? That answer? American. American. When they asked them what's your ancestry, their answer was American. Now that's different than American Indian, which is here and here and here. So this is just American. Up here, so we've got English. So the lavender is English. The darker here is Irish. So the Irish, I told you the Irish came and settled in this area, and that's still dominantly Irish. The purple, excuse me, what color is that? The blue up here, French, because the French Canadians migrated back and forth across the U.S.-Canada border. Okay. What's this one? English. Over here, Mexican along here, and it says San Francisco County, which you can't see. Chinese was the number one answer in San Francisco County. What's the blue? The blue is German. All of this blue here, German. So when people are asked what's your ancestry, there's all your Germans. Up here is Norwegian. Here's your Norwegian that listens to Garrison Keillor on Saturday nights on NPR. There's Lake Wobegon right up there, and so on. Now, this map was used in a blog entry by Rachel Maddow, and the GSIs really thought this was cool, so I'm going to show you what we got. There it is. Oh, is that it? Yes. Okay. So this was something that Maddow posted in 2012, and she was looking at the election results from 2008. So that's the map I just showed you. And then she was looking at the 2008 election results. No. Right, where's the election results? There's the 2008 election results, which correlates pretty strongly with that ancestry map in terms of the red. The darker red is, the darker the red, the higher the Republican vote. The darker the blue, the higher the Democrat vote. So light blue is tips Democrat, but not highly Democrat, and so on. And you can see here, I can't draw on this with my pen, because it's just not how that computer works. Here's the, whoops, damn it. Go back to this. Oh, I have to do this. I already entered my telnet, so it's thinking. Don't think, just do. There we go. Okay, I'm going to try this again, but it may not work because I had that problem today. So it does it again. So I can't do it. But you can pick out the alluvial region. So on the top map with the blue that's sort of going vertically, and that's the Mississippi River in the middle of that. That's your alluvial region where the very large plantations were in the 1850s and the 1860s. This map, then she puts on top of it the map that I had showed you before of cotton production. So the underneath map, blue and red, is the voting. The dots are the cotton production map from 1860 that I showed you just a minute ago. So why all this? This is the really interesting part. There you go. There's Ice Age. This is millions upon millions of years ago. It's like 100 million years ago. And so I can't show you with my little pointer because it keeps washing me away. But the alluvial region is part of this huge swath of whatever that is, water, that comes down, and comes into what's now the Gulf of Mexico. And you can see where the land is different. Now what's really cool is, let me show you the Google map. So, this is going to be the same thing, where I can't, where if I, there we go. If I draw on this, it's going to, and if I point at it, it's not going to work very well. Let me see, is there one of those big pointers in this room? I had bread a few minutes ago, but I used that. See that white stretch right up there that goes up? That's the alluvial. This is Google Map like yesterday, right? So that's the alluvial going straight up. And then you can see also it's much thinner, but it's going up diagonally. That's the Red River Valley. That's the alluvial. That's a result of Ice Age stuff, turning soil, doing stuff to soil nutrients. And it's also where the floodplain is for the Mississippi. So it's a different color because when the Mississippi floods, that gets covered with water. But when the river floods, that changes the nutrients of the land, and it makes the nutrients of the land really great for growing cotton. It doesn't work very well during the flood itself, right? But after the floodwaters are cleared, then you have really rich soil. Now, when the Mississippi had those terrible floods a few years ago, they called it the 500-year flood. Why did they call it the 500-year flood? Well, because until climate change, now we've had them 3 times. But until then, it was the first time the Mississippi had flooded like that in 500 years. So these 500-year floods, which are, alas, becoming much more frequent, restore the nutrients in the land and happen to make the land really fertile for growing cotton. And then you can also see over here, going diagonally, see the little white thing up there? That's snow. So going diagonally are the Appalachians and the Great Smokies, and then the Piedmont is the sort of light green that's just below that diagonal, straight above my pointer. And you can also see the little whoosh that comes this way. That's another nice fertile area for growing cotton. The other thing I want to show you with this map, let me see if I can do this. Remember when we talked about the land and yeah, when I talked to you about the land and whether the farms were square or not. So these are farms in the south. Yeah, I think. Where am I? You know what? I don't know where I am. Hold on. Let me make sure I am where I think I am. I don't think I was where I wanted to be. There. I want to be there. That's better. Now, these aren't going to be square. These are southern. This worked yesterday when I looked at it at home. Why is it not working from there? There's a good example. So see how those are not squares, right? I mean, that's like, I don't think that's a triangle. What is that? That's like a side and then a little jog and then another side. I mean, those are not square. Whatever those are, they're not square. Now let me show you the Midwest. So let's go up here. Let's put Iowa right in the middle. There, that works. Those are squares. So that when you get into Iowa and Minnesota, that area has some rivers in it. There's a big river. Let me get rid of the river area. But those are, and you go in a little bit further, and you can really see the quarter sections, the half sections, the quarter sections, and so on. Yeah. This is from the Northwest Ordinance. Yeah. So this piece I just showed you, this is the result of the Northwest Ordinance. So the surveying that was part of the Northwest Ordinance, where they surveyed all the land, that's why you have rectangular plots in Iowa, and whatever the heck that shape was, it was not a rectangle in the South. Big difference. Much easier to figure out land disputes and all that sort of stuff. All right. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. So the cotton farming is spreading west over time. So this is a funny map. It's showing you the same thing that I think I showed you in another way, with the map itself. But if you look at this, just choose any year and go up, and the width of the band is telling you where the cotton is being grown, and it's out of 100%. So here in 1810, most of the cotton is being grown in South Carolina and Georgia. And then over here in the 1850s, we've got a lot of cotton that's being grown in Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, a little bit in Texas, not a lot, a little bit in Arkansas, not a lot, some in Tennessee, and proportionally not so much anymore in Georgia and South Carolina. That's because of the big increase in the growth of cotton in the West. Cotton production is growing very rapidly in the Antebellum period. So I took the cotton production 1820 to 1919, and I just did a trend line for 1820 to 1860, and the slope of that line, which I forget what the number is and I didn't write it down, the slope of that line will tell you the rate of growth of cotton production on average 1820 to 1860, and you can just eyeball it, I hope, and see that that line, is going to be a lot steeper than a trend line that goes through the postbellum period. So cotton production is growing, and it's growing more rapidly, steeper line, in the 1820 to 1860 period than it does in the postbellum period. And then if you just ignore the slopes and just look at the quantities, the peak amount of cotton is here on the eve of the Civil War. We don't get back to that peak amount of cotton for about a decade or more. So what's the extent of slaveholding? This is data from 1860. The reading by Gavin Wright has other years as well. And again, to see the difference between the regions. So the western uplands, 61% are family farms, 8% are large plantations with 51 or more slaves. The alluvial, 36% family farms, 43% with 51 or more slaves. So huge difference between these regions. For the Cotton South as a whole, 48%, and this gets back to a question that you asked Patrick some time back. For the Cotton South as a whole, 48% of farms in 1860 were held no slaves, were family farms. 18% were the large plantations and some distribution in between. Lots of inequality. The top 10% of slaveholders own 61% of the slaves. The top 10% of the cotton farms produce 68% of the cotton. The top 10% of the southern wealth holders own 59% of wealth. The top 10% of the northern wealth holders own 38% of the wealth. The poorest 50% in the south own less than 10% of the total wealth. So huge skewness of distribution, particularly in the south. So the south has a very different story here than the north. The north is more egalitarian than the south, the whole slavery issue aside. All right, so now let's talk about slavery. The Constitution. Yeah. In these numbers of southern inequality, the African American slaves are counted as wealth for the slaveholders. So the African American slaves are not counted in the denominator. Yes. Right. If you counted the wealth that was owned by the slaves, which is zero, because they're slaves, then that makes the numbers more pronounced. Yeah. Okay. The Constitution prohibits the importation of slaves as of 1808, but it does not prohibit slavery per se. It just says as of 1808, which is 20 years from the passage of the Constitution, no longer will it be legal to bring in slaves over from other countries, primarily across the waters. The slavery, remember, was prohibited in the Northwest Territory. That prohibition stands until 1857. I hope to get to that point today. The southern states, as we know, allowed slavery. The northern states, it had let me back this up. In most of the northern colonies and then states, there were individuals who were enslaved. So in some places they have what they call gradual emancipation, which meant when you die, your children will become free if you're a slave. And so there were, even in some northern places, there were individuals in 1860 who were still enslaved, because in some cases that gradual emancipation had been when you die, your children will become free, but hey, you're only 4 years old now, so by 1860 you're still a slave. But there was clearly not as much slavery in the north as there was in the south. Not all people of African descent were enslaved. This varied by state. So in Delaware, for instance, 17% of the population in Delaware was free African American. In Louisiana, 3% of the population in Louisiana was free African American, 50% white, 47% slaves. So the purple colors here is the share of the population that's slave, the blue is the share of the population that's white, and the red is the share of the population, even in the South, that are free African American. Let's see. I talk and I talk and I talk and I run through like 8 pages when I'm talking. Huh? What year is this? Good question. What year is that? I think this is 1850, but I don't know what year this is. And I don't have a real pen. So would you write year down there and I'll find out. I think it's 1850. It's from a history textbook where I get these colored maps from. I'll have to look it up. Okay. When economic historians, which are people who were trained as economists and study historical events, people like me, when economic historians started studying slavery, some of this literature is in 1958, a lot of it's in the 1970s. The economic historians were largely people who would take economic tools and use those economic tools to understand history. So I talked on the first day about 2 ways of doing economic history. One is take the tools we have as economists, plop them down on top of historical events, and use those tools to understand history. The other thing that economic historians do is we use the history to test the assumptions of the tools that we're using. Most of the literature that has been written on the issue of slavery by economic historians, so people from economics departments, has been literature that uses the tools of economics to try to understand the institution of slavery. Now, the problem when economists do that, it gets at this issue of positive versus normative economic analysis. Positive economic analysis, you may recall this difference from Econ 1. Positive economic analysis is free of judgment. There's no should statements involved. It is simply straight-on analysis. Is something profitable? Is something not profitable? What makes the price go up? So reading the regression results. Normative is the judgment. Normative is where we take into account norms, morals, justice issues, all that sort of good stuff. Most of the literature from economists are examples of positive economic analysis. They approached the issue of slavery as if they could do straight-on economic analysis around this issue without making any normative judgment, without saying whether or not the institution as an institution was good or bad. When economists pretend that what we do is devoid of ethics and devoid of norms, we get ourselves in a whole heap of trouble, because what we do is not devoid of ethics and is not devoid of norms. And so when economists started studying slavery, they came off as pompous asses, frankly. Ooh, I'm being recorded. Anyway. Because they were taking these tools and plopping them down on top of an issue that is impossible to consider without thinking about the moral and ethical aspects of it. I don't know how you can talk about one group of people enslaving another group of people and pretend there's no morality issue there, there's no ethical issue there, there's no justice issue there, but that's what the economists did. They said, let's take our tools and see what our tools tell us. Now, the result of that analysis does get us some interesting insights and has totally changed everybody's understanding of slavery. But it also was a time when economists were reamed, probably justly, by the historians. The historians, not the people who were trained as economists, but the people who were trained as historians, they weren't going to look at slavery without thinking about the moral issues, the justice issues, the ethical issues. And so for them to have a group of colleagues from across campus, from the social sciences as opposed to the humanities, who were trying to talk about this issue that's run through with moral issues, to talk about it as if there was no moral issue to talk about, frankly led to a generation of schism between history departments and economics departments. It led to a generation or more of historians who say very negative things still today about cliometrics, the use of economic analysis to understand history. It led to a generation or more of historians who will say not nice things about economic economists who are economic historians, even if they don't know any of us. They'll have negative things to say. And you can find these people over there in Bunnell, and I understand why they're there. But I understand it, because we came off not well in this debate. All right, the old view that economists wanted to attack was that slavery was an irrational act. Irrational in the economic sense. That it was based on prejudice, that it was backward, that it was inefficient, and that it was unprofitable. This is the old view that economists confronted in the 1950s when they first started working on the issue of slavery. That slavery was irrational, prejudicial, backward, inefficient, and unprofitable. And left to its own devices, it could not stand. As a result of the work that economists have done, that view has gone away. And by and large, people now believe that slavery as practiced in the United States was profitable. It was a profitable institution. These were profit-maximizing individuals who were making profit. That it was efficient, that there was high levels of productivity. And economically, it was rational. But remember what the word rational means. This is economists, you know, when you take a word, like Lewis Carroll said, and use it to mean exactly what you mean it to mean, you might wind up having trouble communicating with other people. So economists, when they say something is rational, they don't mean rational in the Webster's dictionary sense. They mean people are trying to achieve the goal of maximizing utility if they're an individual, or maximizing profit if they're a business owner. Farmers are business owners. So when they say that slavery was an economically rational institution, it doesn't mean it would say, hey, this is a good thing. You're pretty rational if you think you can go out and own another person. It means if your goal is to maximize profit, and you want to run your farm with slaves, buying a slave was a profit-maximizing thing to do. It increased your profit to do so. Well, I'll show you. Why the sudden about face? I'm going to show you some of this stuff. The problem that economists got themselves into is that